What's up, guys? It is Zip here, and we're giving you guys our top 8 list of features we are uber excited for in Sekiro, Sudoku, whatever you want to call it. We all know what you mean. And we're just going to start off with our first one, which is not a truly ungated open world, but more open than Souls games have been in the past.
Yeah, honestly, whenever I take a look at it, it certainly seems like they want you to go explore the world in a random direction more than in the past. Because I mean, take Dark Souls 3 for example. Definitely up until you got to the Firelink Shrine, you had exactly one way to go that led to just one boss fight, and pretty much you're made up until you actually get off of the high wall of Londor. You were kind of made to go in this very, very specific direction. You had like little offshoots that you could go to, but that was about all you had.
Right, for me, I find it to be a lot more appealing. I never was a huge Souls fan. I know that's kind of a cardinal sin in the gaming community nowadays.
Ugh.
But there was a variety of issues for me with the game series. And to be completely honest, they all seem to have been fixed with this game. But even the world being partially open, you know, the developers, I believe they stated that it would be once you get to mid game, once you get to your mid game, the world will almost completely open up. And I find that just that's super exciting for me. I don't know about Genji, but yeah, for me that was one of the main turnoffs of Dark Souls is it felt so linear. I felt like I had to do this very specific grind, and also I feel like when you when you make the world fully gated, it makes it where the game has less playability because you kind of get burnout. You have to follow this strict road over and over again if you want to replay the game and try different class options, different play styles, etc.
Yeah, and while I do believe that having the world significantly more open is definitely a plus, especially whenever you look at a lot of From's older games. Uh, Another thing that I'm really looking forward to is I've been hearing that they're going to be having multiple endings in this game, which is a really big thing. But with this game, it seems more like your actual actions in the game are going to change how the ending folds out.
Right. Yeah, yeah. What we know there is as of right now, there's four different endings, and that's just happened through people looking into the trophies. Um, and you can go look those up, guys. We'll put a link in the description for those. But yeah, the trophies for the game have been leaked. They've been discussed, and as of right now, there are four confirmed different endings for the game. But yeah, I always like multiple endings. I think that makes it feel like an RPG, a non-linear RPG, where you're not just you're grinding through to get to the end of the predetermined story. And yeah, I mean, all four options are technically predetermined, but at least there's some degree of variance, makes you feel like your choices do matter and they're reflective of what you would actually do.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes it feel like there's more weight to the choices that you make. Like, from what people have been able to tell, how many times you die actually can have a serious effect on the ending of the game, which kind of builds this incentive to be more careful with your choices.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's heavily implied through some of the trophies that there is a severe gravity to how many times you die. That
Mhm.
deeply affects the game. That's kind of scary, given that death being used advantageously in the game. I think that's a really interesting take, especially from Software, where they farm death on their players. Um, Being able to use death in a way that is beneficial to the player, I think, is just an awesome feature. I can't think of another game where they've used that before, and I really like the idea. Also, it's really pleasing when you watch kind of the reanimation, how it works, and the Japanese magnolia petals that kind of poof around when it happens. It's a very pretty animation and a very useful tactic. Now, I did notice I was watching some footage of a boss fight, and she immediately aggroed back on. Like the second you pop back up, she was on you. So I'm assuming there is some threshold to how much you can use it and how much it will be used advantageously. Obviously, I would assume bosses would have a higher, I guess, a higher threat capacity, a higher awareness. So
Yeah.
yeah, she immediately recognized, and that was the footage they showed fighting the corrupted monk. And yeah, I mean, split second, she was already aggro again. And with lesser characters, it seems like you're able to kind of creep on them and insta kill them from behind for stealth kills and whatever. And I think that's just awesome. We definitely
Oh yeah.
need that.
I definitely feel very iffy about it because it does kind of put this duality in how you approach combat because it does appear that feigning your death can be used in order to get in some really opportune attacks. But whenever you consider that you only have, I believe it's 2 downs, and then you outright die, and whenever dying makes you automatically lose half your currency, half your skill points, and too many deaths can fuck up the ending, it really kind of creates this risk reward factor of is the chance of wasting one of your deaths worth a good attack on your opponent, you know?
Well, I mean, you got to think there's also the purist option. There's gonna be people that are gonna play through this game with the goal of never actually getting downed because they're gonna want the achievement for I know there's an achievement for it, for not progressing Dragon Rot. You know, so
Really?
I mean, yeah. And if you want to be able to get those kind of things, you're going to have to play completely differently, and that's what I like. It seems like
Mhm.
it's not necessarily about builds. Yeah, it's multi-layered. You know, you have aspects to the game that completely add an additional layer to your build, like death. Death is a huge thing. You know, like
Mhm.
you're deeply affecting the world around you when you die. So if you're trying to play like a glass cannon or something that's going to get blown out a lot, um, you kind of have to accept that you're completely altering the world around you. That's not just your build, that's actually your story progression as well. And I think that's
Well,
really interesting.
that does kinda segue into, something that I was, actually kinda looking forward to in this game is that there really aren't any builds in this game. You do have skill points that you can invest in. You have the exact same armor, and you're stuck with a katana in your, main hand. And pretty much that's all you get. There is, as best as I can tell, no real customization to the point where you actually have builds. While you do have a few things to choose from, most people are going to progress through the game in a very, very similar method, you know?
Yeah, I mean these aren't world altering builds. You know, it's not going to heavily change the story. It's all play style relative. Um, and no, they're not deeply impacting from what I've seen. Um, they pretty much just enhance play style. You know,
Mhm.
it's not like a class choice. It's more like you are a generic shinobi and you play the game how you want to, and um, there will be channels for you to navigate. You know, different ways for you to venture out and explore that. It's not so oriented around class, which
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about
Which
that. I like classes. I like class choices, but
mhm.
I'm going to play this because I pretty much everything else for me is a positive in this game.
Mhm. Well, honestly, I see this as a positive in some ways because obviously people are upset because it's from software and they expect like big RPGs. Like you have no idea how many lists you can find out there of like these are the authentic Japanese weapons I'm hoping to see in Sekiro, and then it's like a list of 20 weapons that they like absolutely want to see. And it's just a matter of it's meant to be an action game with a very, very specific hero who's carrying a weapon that is. I mean, you see it yourself in most of the trailers. uh, the wolf is carrying a very, very specific katana that has that red aura about it. Like it's clearly meant to be very important to the story, you know?
Right. Yeah. I believe there's technically two weapons that you get, uh, but they don't ever really change. The katana that is your main weapon. Where is it? Kusabi Maru, I believe, is what it's called.
Uh,
And yeah, I mean you are going to be using that katana whether you like it or not. That is your weapon for this game. And I know for me that's a negative, but you actually stated that was a positive for you. So
well, the reason behind that is pretty much that whenever I think of that, I think of the lack of that tiering that you typically get with games like this. And don't get me wrong, tiering is not necessarily a bad thing, but it was always a little bit infuriating, especially in the Souls games in particular. Whenever I'd pick up something like like a bastard sword, and I'm thinking, wow, this is actually pretty good. I enjoy this, and I'll invest a lot of materials into upgrading it. I'll enchant it or infuse it, however it is in the Souls games. And then I go onto some kind of forum, and it's like, oh yeah, that weapon that you spent a lot of time getting used to and is actually like pretty good. It is like E tier, and it's just like I beat the final boss with it. You know, how bad could it honestly be? And then you go see all these people. Like I feel like whenever you have weapon diversity and classes, while it is good for an RPG, whenever you're focusing on a very single character, it makes it soul sucking because people will just try to metagame the ever living piss out of it, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Whenever you're doing it in an RPG, it's fine to try and build because you can still try and role play and that sort of stuff. But whenever you have a story that's very centered on a particular character, in my opinion, it just becomes kind of soul sucking whenever you try and meta in the middle of an important story to make an optimal build because it feels like you're focusing too much on like, okay, this is how I can just one shot the end game boss rather than the story that's happening right in front of you, you
I
know?
mean, for me, it's really it's how you approach the game. You know, like is the game story driven? If it is, then it shouldn't be meta dependent. You know, if it's not story driven and it's player driven, then it should be meta dependent. This one, it seems though that they really do want this to be a story driven game, and it's a very linear story. Even though it does have multiple endings, the story itself is linear, and it does make sense to pull out weapon choices. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on that. I am, but I do think it's an interesting choice, especially given the company. I find that it is very interesting. They've made a lot of they've definitely taken their mold and broken it with this
Yes.
game because they have deviated pretty much from every single norm that they have. And usually, what happens there is you either end up something really, really terrible or something really, really unique and cool. And from what I've seen with this game so far, I think we're venturing much more into the cool territory. So I'm
Mhm.
holding out hope. And like I said, you think that's positive. I'm on the fence about it, but I'm gonna hold out. Um, hey guys, sorry, we actually kind of hit our time limit there, and we're trying to keep the videos framed up at reasonable lengths. So this has actually become a two-parter, so like, subscribe, and we hope you enjoy the content. And we should be uploading the next one within a day. Yeah. Yeah. So, see you guys then. This is Zip signing off. Peace.